The crowd's laughter echoed across the shooting range like thunder before a storm. Sarah Martinez stood quietly, her calloused hands steady despite the jeers surrounding her. The men beside her exchanged knowing glances, their expensive hunting rifles gleaming in the afternoon sun. They had money, they had connections, and they had decades of weekend warrior experience. What they didn't have was the knowledge that the woman they were mocking had once held a rifle scope steady while hanging upside down from a helicopter, taking out high-value targets in the mountains of Afghanistan. "Come on, sweetheart," chuckled Brad, a local businessman whose belly stretched his camouflage shirt tight. "This isn't some carnival game. Maybe you should stick to the .22 range where the kids practice." Sarah's eyes never left her target 800 yards away. The wind was picking up from the southeast at about 12 miles per hour. She calculated the adjustment needed in her head, the same way she had done it hundreds of times when lives depended on her accuracy. The same way she had done it when she was one of only 12 women to ever complete the Navy SEAL sniper program. "One shot," she said quietly, her voice carrying a calm authority that made a few of the men stop laughing. "If I make it, you donate $1,000 each to the Veterans Foundation. If I miss, I'll leave and never come back to this range." The bet was accepted before anyone thought to ask why a woman who looked like she could be their daughter or sister spoke with such unwavering confidence. They were about to find out that some people carry their battles silently, and some warriors hide in plain sight. Sarah Elena Martinez grew up in a small town called Cedar Falls, where the biggest excitement usually came from Friday night football games and the annual corn festival. Her father, Miguel Martinez, worked double shifts at the local auto parts factory, while her mother, Rosa, cleaned houses for wealthy families on the other side of town. Their small yellow house with its creaky front porch sat on Elm Street, where children rode bicycles until the streetlights came on, and neighbors knew each other's business almost as well as their own. From the time Sarah could walk, she was different from other children. While her younger brother Carlos preferred video games and comic books, Sarah spent hours in the backyard with her grandfather's old BB gun, shooting tin cans off the fence posts. Her grandfather, Antonio, had served in Vietnam and noticed his granddaughter's natural eye for shooting. Every weekend, he would take her to the small patch of woods behind their house and teach her about patience, breathing, and the art of staying perfectly still. "Mija," Antonio would say in his gentle voice, mixing Spanish and English the way he always did. "Shooting is not about the gun. It is about your mind, your heart, and your spirit working together. The gun is just the tool. You are the weapon." Sarah's parents worried about their daughter's unusual hobby. In their neighborhood, girls were supposed to focus on school, help with household chores, and maybe join the cheerleading squad if they were lucky. They didn't understand why their bright, beautiful daughter preferred spending time learning about rifles and ammunition instead of shopping for dresses or talking about boys like her classmates did. The financial struggles in the Martinez household were constant and unforgiving. Miguel's wages barely covered the rent, groceries, and utilities. Rosa's cleaning jobs brought in just enough extra money to keep the family from falling behind on their bills, but there was never anything left over for luxuries. Sarah wore hand-me-down clothes from her cousins and learned to stretch every dollar her parents gave her for school supplies and lunch money. When Sarah turned 16, she knew that college would be impossible without significant financial help. Her grades were excellent, maintaining a 3.8 GPA throughout high school, but her family simply couldn't afford tuition, room, and board. She watched as her classmates talked excitedly about their college plans while she wondered if she would spend the rest of her life in Cedar Falls, eventually working at the same factory as her father. During her junior year of high school, a military recruiter visited Cedar Falls High School. Staff Sergeant Johnson, a tall woman with sharp eyes and commanding presence, spoke to the assembled students about opportunities in the armed forces. She talked about travel, education benefits, and the chance to serve something greater than yourself. But what caught Sarah's attention was when Sergeant Johnson mentioned special operations and the elite units within each branch of the military. After the presentation, Sarah approached the recruiter with questions that surprised the experienced soldier. While other students asked about basic training and job assignments, Sarah wanted to know about sniper schools, special forces training, and combat deployments. Sergeant Johnson studied the young woman carefully, noting the intensity in her dark eyes and the way she stood with perfect posture despite her casual clothing. "Why are you interested in combat roles?" Sergeant Johnson asked directly. "Most young women your age are more interested in technical fields or medical training." Sarah's answer came without hesitation. "Because I want to make a difference where it matters most. I want to serve in a way that saves lives and protects people who can't protect themselves. I've been shooting since I was 7 years old, and I know I have a gift that could be useful." The recruiter spent an additional 30 minutes talking with Sarah about the realities of military life, the challenges of special operations training, and the physical and mental demands of combat service. She explained that women were only recently being allowed into certain combat roles, and that the path Sarah was considering would be extraordinarily difficult. "The dropout rate for special operations training is over 90% for men," Sergeant Johnson warned. "For women, the challenges are even greater because of the physical requirements and the resistance you'll face from some of your male colleagues." Sarah listened carefully to everything the recruiter said, but her resolve only strengthened. That evening, she went home and had the most difficult conversation of her young life with her parents. Miguel and Rosa sat at their kitchen table, the same table where they had celebrated birthdays and helped with homework for years, and listened as their daughter explained her decision to join the Navy with the goal of becoming a Navy SEAL. The reaction was immediate and emotional. Rosa burst into tears, unable to imagine her daughter in combat situations half a world away. Miguel's face went through a range of emotions from shock to anger to something that might have been pride. They argued for hours about the dangers, the uncertainty, and the fact that Sarah would be walking away from a traditional path that might lead to marriage and grandchildren. "Mija, you could get killed," Rosa said through her tears. "You could come home broken or not come home at all. Is this really what you want for your life?" Sarah took her mother's hands across the kitchen table and spoke with a maturity that surprised everyone in the room, including herself. "Mama, I could get killed crossing the street tomorrow. But if I stay here, if I don't try to use this gift I have, I'll die a little bit every day wondering what I could have accomplished. Abuelo taught me to shoot, but he also taught me that with great ability comes great responsibility." Her grandfather, who had been listening quietly from his chair in the corner, finally spoke up. "Let her go, Rosa. I've seen how she shoots. I've watched her practice until her fingers bled, and she could barely keep her eyes open. This isn't some teenage dream. This is her calling." The family spent the next several weeks researching military service, talking to veterans in their community, and learning about the benefits that military service could provide. They discovered that the GI Bill would pay for Sarah's college education after her service, and that the training she would receive could open doors that would otherwise remain closed forever. Miguel and Rosa gradually came to understand that their daughter's decision wasn't about running away from her family or rejecting their values. It was about pursuing excellence and serving something larger than herself. They saw how other young people in their community struggled to find direction and purpose, while Sarah had found both at the age of 16. On a cold Tuesday morning in November, the entire Martinez family drove to the military entrance processing station in the nearest major city. Sarah had spent months preparing physically and mentally for this moment. She had run miles every morning before school, done push-ups and sit-ups until her muscles screamed for mercy, and studied everything she could find about Navy SEAL training and requirements. The processing station was a gray building filled with young men and women from all walks of life, each taking the first step toward military service. Sarah noticed that she was one of only a handful of young women, and the only one who had expressed interest in special operations training. The other female recruits seemed focused on administrative roles, medical training, or technical specialties. During her interview with the Navy counselor, Sarah made it clear that she wanted to pursue the most challenging path available. The counselor, a career sailor with 23 years of experience, explained the process of becoming a Navy SEAL and the preliminary training that would be required before she could even attempt the selection process. "The failure rate is extremely high," he warned. "Most people who think they want to be SEALs change their minds once they understand what the training actually involves. The physical demands are just the beginning. The mental pressure, the sleep deprivation, and the constant testing of your limits break down even the strongest candidates. Sarah signed her enlistment papers that day with her family watching. As she raised her right hand and took the oath of enlistment, she felt the weight of her decision and the magnitude of the commitment she was making. She was promising to serve her country for the next 8 years, with the understanding that much of that time would be spent in dangerous places doing dangerous things. The months between her enlistment and her departure for basic training passed quickly. Sarah continued her physical preparation while finishing her senior year of high school. She graduated third in her class and was selected as the recipient of the school's award for determination and perseverance. Her classmates, who had initially been puzzled by her decision to join the military, came to respect her dedication and courage. On the night before she left for basic training, Sarah's family threw a small party in their backyard. Neighbors, teachers, and friends came to wish her well and to celebrate the young woman who had chosen such an unusual path. Her grandfather pulled her aside during the party and gave her his most treasured possession, a silver compass that he had carried through Vietnam. "This compass brought me home from a war," he said, pressing the small instrument into her hands. "It will bring you home too, Mija. No matter how lost you feel, no matter how dark things get, remember that you know how to find your way. You've always known." The next morning, Sarah hugged her family goodbye at the bus station. Her mother cried, her father tried to hide his tears, and her brother promised to write letters every week. As the bus pulled away from Cedar Falls, Sarah watched her hometown disappear in the distance and felt a mixture of excitement and terror that would stay with her for months to come. The journey to Great Lakes Naval Training Center took 14 hours, with stops in 3 different cities. Sarah used the time to think about her goals and to prepare herself mentally for the challenges ahead. She knew that the next several months would test every aspect of her character and ability. She also knew that many people would be watching to see if the small-town girl from Cedar Falls had what it took to succeed in one of the most demanding military training programs in the world. When the bus finally arrived at the training center, Sarah gathered her single duffel bag and stepped into her new life with determination and hope. She had no way of knowing that the next 18 months would transform her from a teenager with a dream into one of the most skilled and lethal operators in the United States military. She only knew that she was ready to begin the journey that would define the rest of her life. Basic training at Great Lakes Naval Training Center was unlike anything Sarah had experienced in her 18 years of life. The moment she stepped off the bus, a drill instructor began shouting instructions that seemed designed more to confuse and intimidate than to inform. Sarah and 89 other recruits were herded into a large building where they would spend the next several hours getting haircuts, uniforms, and the first taste of military discipline. The transformation from civilian to sailor happened quickly and without sentiment. Sarah watched her long black hair fall to the floor in chunks as the barber worked with mechanical efficiency. The young woman who looked back at her from the mirror was almost unrecognizable, but Sarah felt a sense of purpose and belonging that she had never experienced before. This was the beginning of becoming who she was meant to be. Her drill instructors were hard but fair, treating all recruits with the same mixture of demanding expectations and grudging respect for those who met the standards. Petty Officer Martinez, as she was now called, excelled in every aspect of basic training. While other recruits struggled with the physical demands, Sarah found that her years of preparation had served her well. She could complete the obstacle courses faster than most of her male counterparts and maintain her composure during the high-stress situations that broke down other recruits. The academic portions of basic training were equally challenging, covering everything from naval history and military protocol to weapons handling and emergency procedures. Sarah absorbed every piece of information with the intensity of someone who understood that knowledge could mean the difference between life and death in future situations. She spent her limited free time studying and helping other recruits who were struggling with the material. During the weapons training portion of basic training, Sarah's exceptional marksmanship skills became apparent to her instructors. While other recruits needed multiple attempts to qualify with the standard Navy rifle, Sarah consistently scored in the expert range on her first attempts. Her shooting instructor, Gunner's Mate First Class Thompson, pulled her aside after a particularly impressive performance on the rifle range. "Martinez, where did you learn to shoot like that?" he asked, studying her qualification scores with interest. "My grandfather taught me," Petty Officer Thompson, Sarah replied, maintaining the respectful tone required when speaking to superior personnel. "I've been shooting since I was 7 years old." Thompson nodded slowly, making notes on his clipboard. "Have you given any thought to your specialty rating? With scores like these, you could have your pick of assignments in the weapons community." Sarah took a deep breath before answering. She knew that this conversation could determine the course of her entire naval career. "I want to try out for Special Operations, Petty Officer Thompson. My goal is to become a Navy SEAL." The older man's expression changed from interest to concern. "Martinez, you need to understand that women haven't traditionally been allowed in SEAL teams. The policy has recently changed, but the training is brutal. Most men don't make it through, and the few women who have attempted it have all dropped out during the first phase." "I understand, Petty Officer Thompson, but I want to try." Thompson studied her for a long moment before nodding. "I'll make some phone calls. If you're serious about this, you'll need to volunteer for the PST, the physical screening test, and meet some very specific standards before you can even be considered for SEAL training. Are you willing to put in the extra work required?" Sarah's answer was immediate and firm. "Yes, Petty Officer Thompson. I'll do whatever it takes." The next 6 weeks of basic training took on new meaning for Sarah. In addition to her regular duties and training, she began an intensive physical conditioning program designed to prepare her for the SEAL physical screening test. She woke up an hour before reveille to run additional miles, stayed after evening training sessions to work on swimming techniques, and pushed her body to limits she hadn't known existed. Her fellow recruits initially thought she was crazy for volunteering for additional punishment, but gradually began to respect her dedication and drive. Sarah never complained about the extra work or asked for special treatment. She simply put her head down and did what needed to be done, earning the respect of her peers and instructors through consistent performance and unwavering determination. The physical screening test took place on a cold morning in February. Sarah had trained for this moment for months, but she knew that passing the test would only earn her the opportunity to begin the real challenge. The requirements seemed almost impossible: a 500-yard swim in 12 minutes and 30 seconds, at least 50 push-ups in 2 minutes, at least 50 sit-ups in 2 minutes, at least 10 pull-ups with no time limit, and a 1.5-mile run in boots and pants in 10 minutes and 30 seconds. Sarah completed the swim in 11 minutes and 15 seconds, crushing the minimum requirement. The push-ups and sit-ups were demanding but manageable, and she finished with 67 push-ups and 78 sit-ups. The pull-ups presented a greater challenge due to her smaller frame, but she managed 12 repetitions through pure determination and technique. The final test was the run, and Sarah finished in 9 minutes and 45 seconds, well under the maximum allowed time. When the results were announced, Sarah was one of only 3 recruits from her training class who had passed all requirements. More significantly, she was the first woman from Great Lakes to qualify for SEAL training in the program's history. The achievement brought attention from senior Navy personnel who wanted to meet the young sailor who was breaking new ground. Captain Rebecca Walsh, the commanding officer of the training center, called Sarah to her office the day after the PST results were announced. Captain Walsh was a decorated naval aviator with 22 years of service, and Sarah was nervous about the meeting. She had never been called to speak with such a high-ranking officer, and she wasn't sure what to expect. "At ease, Martinez," Captain Walsh said as Sarah entered the office and stood at attention. "I wanted to congratulate you on your PST scores and talk to you about what comes next." Sarah relaxed slightly but remained focused and respectful. "Thank you, Captain Walsh. I'm going to be direct with you, Martinez. You're entering a program where you'll face challenges that go beyond physical training. Some of your classmates and instructors will question whether you belong there. Some will hope you fail. You'll be tested in ways that have nothing to do with your ability and everything to do with your gender. Are you prepared for that reality?" Sarah had thought about this conversation many times during her preparation. "Captain Walsh, I understand that I'll be entering a male-dominated environment where I'll have to prove myself every day. I'm prepared to work harder than anyone else and to earn my place through performance, not through special treatment. Captain Walsh smiled for the first time during the conversation. Good answer. Here's what I want you to remember during the difficult times ahead. You're not just representing yourself. Every woman who comes after you will benefit from your success or be limited by your failure. That's not fair, but it's reality. Can you handle that pressure? Yes, ma'am. I can handle it. The captain handed Sarah a folder containing her orders and travel arrangements. You'll report to Naval Amphibious Base Coronado in California in 2 weeks for basic underwater demolition/SEAL training. The program is 24 weeks long and is divided into 3 phases. Phase 1 is physical conditioning and will test every aspect of your endurance and mental toughness. If you make it through Phase 1, you'll move on to diving and land warfare training. Sarah accepted the folder with hands that she willed to remain steady. Captain Walsh, may I ask you a question? Of course. Do you think I can make it? Captain Walsh stood up and walked around her desk to face Sarah directly. Martinez, I've been in the Navy for 22 years, and I've seen thousands of sailors come through training programs. Most of them were good people who wanted to serve their country. Some of them were exceptional individuals who had the rare combination of physical ability, mental toughness, and character necessary to succeed in the most demanding circumstances. You're one of the exceptional ones. Whether you make it through SEAL training will depend on how badly you want it and how much you're willing to sacrifice to achieve your goal. The 2 weeks before her departure for California passed quickly. Sarah used the time to continue her physical conditioning and to research everything she could about SEAL training. She read books written by former SEALs, studied videos of training exercises, and talked to everyone she could find who had any knowledge about the program. Her family was both proud and terrified when she called to tell them about her assignment to SEAL training. Miguel had done research of his own and understood the significance of his daughter's achievement. Rosa worried constantly about the dangers her daughter would face, both during training and in her eventual assignments. Carlos, now a sophomore in high school, told everyone who would listen that his sister was going to be a Navy SEAL. On her last day at Great Lakes, Sarah packed her belongings and said goodbye to the friends and instructors who had helped her reach this point. Petty Officer Thompson gave her a book about advanced marksmanship techniques and a piece of advice that would stay with her throughout her career. Martinez, you have a gift that can't be taught, he said as they shook hands. But gifts mean nothing without the character to use them properly. Remember that you'll be carrying a weapon that can take a life from 1,000 yards away. That's a responsibility that should never be taken lightly. Sarah flew to San Diego on a Tuesday morning in March, watching the flat landscape of the Midwest give way to mountains and desert as the plane carried her toward her destiny. She knew that the next 6 months would test every aspect of her physical, mental, and emotional strength. She also knew that failure would mean returning to a more traditional naval career path, while success would open doors to opportunities that few people could imagine. As the plane began its descent into San Diego International Airport, Sarah looked out the window at the Pacific Ocean stretching endlessly toward the horizon. Somewhere beyond that water were countries where American forces were engaged in combat operations, places where the skills she was about to learn would be put to the ultimate test. The thought both terrified and excited her, and she spent the final minutes of the flight preparing herself mentally for the challenge that would define the rest of her life. Naval Amphibious Base Coronado rose from the California coastline like a fortress of sand and concrete, its buildings standing stark against the endless blue of the Pacific Ocean. As Sarah's taxi approached the main gate, she could see groups of men in olive green uniforms running in formation along the beach, their synchronized movements creating clouds of sand in their wake. The sound of instructors shouting commands carried across the base, mixing with the crash of waves and the distant roar of military aircraft. Sarah reported to the Basic Underwater Demolition/SEAL Training Command building exactly as instructed in her orders. The lobby was filled with photographs of SEAL teams in action around the world, displaying the history and traditions of the community she hoped to join. Behind the reception desk, a petty officer looked up from his paperwork and studied Sarah with obvious curiosity. "You must be Martinez," he said, checking her identification against a list on his clipboard. You're the first woman we've had report for BUD/S training. Are you sure you're in the right place? Yes, Petty Officer. I'm here for basic underwater demolition/SEAL training, Class 347. The Petty Officer nodded and handed her a thick folder of paperwork. You'll need to complete all of these forms before processing. Your class doesn't begin for another week, so you'll be assigned to a holding company where you'll participate in pre-training conditioning. Fair warning, Martinez, they're going to test you from the moment you step foot on the training grounds. Sarah spent the next several days learning about the base and meeting the other candidates who would begin training with Class 347. There were 185 men from various backgrounds, college graduates, fleet sailors, Marines, and even a few officers. She was the only woman in the group, and the reaction to her presence ranged from curiosity to skepticism to outright hostility. Some of her future classmates were supportive and welcoming, understanding that she had earned her place through the same qualification process as everyone else. Others made no effort to hide their belief that women didn't belong in special operations, making comments designed to intimidate or discourage her. Sarah ignored the negative reactions and focused on building relationships with those who were willing to judge her based on performance rather than gender. The pre-training conditioning was intense, but manageable for someone who had prepared as thoroughly as Sarah had. The days began before sunrise with long runs on the beach, followed by swimming sessions in the cold Pacific Ocean, calisthenics sessions that seemed to last forever, and obstacle course training that tested every muscle in her body. Sarah consistently performed in the top third of her group, earning grudging respect from instructors who had expected her to struggle. Her first real test came during a swimming exercise designed to evaluate underwater competency. The candidates were required to swim 50 meters underwater without surfacing, a task that challenged even strong swimmers. Many of the men struggled with the distance and technique required, but Sarah completed the swim with ease, having spent countless hours training in pools and open water during her preparation. Instructor Chief Petty Officer Davidson, a 20-year SEAL veteran with multiple combat deployments, pulled Sarah aside after the swimming test. Martinez, that was impressive technique. Where did you learn to swim like that? I taught myself, Chief Davidson. I spent the last year training in every pool and lake I could find, working on breath control and underwater distance. Chief Davidson nodded approvingly. Good preparation. But swimming is just one small part of what we do here. The real test begins when your class officially starts next week. The first day of actual BUD/S training arrived with typical California weather, cool, foggy, and damp. Sarah joined her 185 classmates on the beach at 0500 hours for the beginning of Phase 1, which would last for 7 weeks and cover physical conditioning, water competency, and teamwork skills. The dropout rate during Phase 1 was historically around 70%, meaning that fewer than 60 of the original 186 candidates would advance to Phase 2. The instructors wasted no time in establishing the tone for the training program. Chief Davidson and his team of experienced SEAL operators began the first day with a speech that left no doubt about the challenges ahead. Welcome to BUD/S, ladies and gentlemen, Chief Davidson announced, his voice carrying clearly across the beach. For the next 7 weeks, we are going to test everything about you. Your physical strength, your mental toughness, your ability to work as part of a team, and your commitment to excellence. Most of you will not be here at the end of this phase. That's not because we want you to fail. It's because only a small percentage of people have what it takes to be Navy SEALs. The first week of training established a routine that would become brutally familiar. Each day began with physical training at 0500, including running, swimming, and calisthenics. After breakfast, the class would participate in various training evolutions designed to build teamwork and test individual limits. Afternoons included more physical training, academic instruction on topics like maritime operations and small unit tactics and equipment maintenance. Sarah quickly learned that the physical challenges, while demanding, were only part of the test. The instructors constantly evaluated the candidates' attitudes, leadership potential, and ability to function under stress. They deliberately created situations where candidates would be cold, tired, hungry, and frustrated. Then, observed how each person responded to adversity. The grinder, a large asphalt area next to the beach, became the site of countless hours of calisthenics and team-building exercises. Sarah and her classmates performed thousands of push-ups, sit-ups, and other exercises while instructors provided constant feedback and motivation. The cold Pacific Ocean served as both a training environment and a form of punishment, with candidates frequently ordered into the surf for surf torture sessions that could last for hours. By the end of the second week, 12 candidates had voluntarily withdrawn from training, unable to handle the physical and mental pressure. Sarah remained strong, maintaining her performance standards despite the constant stress and fatigue. She noticed that some of her male classmates were beginning to look at her differently, recognizing that she was handling the training as well as anyone in the class. The teamwork aspects of training proved to be some of Sarah's greatest strengths. During boat crew exercises, where teams of 6 candidates had to carry heavy inflatable boats over their heads while running on the beach, Sarah's technique and conditioning helped her team consistently finish near the front of the group. Her boat crew teammates initially worried that her smaller size would be a liability, but they quickly learned that her endurance and determination more than compensated for any physical disadvantages. Week 4 brought the introduction of more advanced water training, including combat swimming with full equipment and underwater knot tying. Sarah excelled in these evolutions, drawing on her extensive swimming background and natural comfort in the water. While other candidates struggled with the technical aspects of underwater navigation and equipment handling, Sarah completed the tasks efficiently and accurately. The psychological pressure intensified as the class approached Hell Week, the legendary 5-day training exercise that would begin at the end of Week 4. Hell Week was designed to push candidates beyond their perceived limits through sleep deprivation, constant physical activity, and mental challenges that tested every aspect of their character. Historical data showed that roughly half of the candidates who made it to Hell Week would quit before it was over. In the days leading up to Hell Week, Sarah focused on mental preparation as much as physical readiness. She had read everything she could find about the experience and had developed strategies for dealing with the hallucinations, confusion, and despair that sleep deprivation would bring. She also strengthened her relationships with her boat crew teammates, understanding that mutual support would be critical during the most challenging days ahead. Hell Week began on a Sunday evening with a simulated enemy attack on the candidate barracks. Explosions, smoke, and the sound of machine gun fire filled the air as instructors herded the disoriented candidates onto the beach for the beginning of 5 days and 5 nights of continuous training. Sarah felt her heart rate spike as adrenaline flooded her system, but she quickly regained control and began executing the skills she had practiced for months. The first night set the tone for everything that would follow. The candidates were kept in constant motion, running from training evolution to training evolution with no rest periods. They carried boats over their heads for miles, performed countless calisthenics exercises in the cold sand, and endured hours in the frigid ocean surf. Sarah's preparation served her well during these initial challenges, but she knew that the real test would come when fatigue and sleep deprivation began to take their toll. By Tuesday morning, roughly 30 candidates had quit, unable to handle the combination of physical exhaustion and mental pressure. Sarah was operating on perhaps 3 hours of sleep total, but she remained focused and determined. Her boat crew had developed a strong bond, supporting each other through the most difficult moments and celebrating small victories when they completed evolution successfully. The hallucinations began on Wednesday night, as Sarah's sleep-deprived brain struggled to process the constant stream of information and activity. She saw shapes moving in the darkness that weren't there, heard voices calling her name when no one was around, and sometimes found herself momentarily confused about where she was or what she was supposed to be doing. The instructors watched carefully for signs that candidates were becoming genuinely disoriented, but they allowed the minor hallucinations to continue as part of the training process. Thursday brought some of the most challenging evolutions of Hell Week, including long-distance boat carries across soft sand and complex problem-solving exercises that required clear thinking despite severe fatigue. Sarah's boat crew finished these evolutions in good order, maintaining their position in the top half of the remaining teams. She noticed that her teammates were beginning to rely on her judgment and leadership during the more technical aspects of training. Friday morning arrived with the traditional End of Hell Week ceremony, where the surviving candidates were welcomed into the brotherhood of those who had completed one of the military's most challenging training exercises. Of the original 186 candidates who had started Phase 1, only 87 remained. Sarah was among them, having never seriously considered quitting despite the extreme physical and mental challenges. Chief Davidson addressed the survivors as they sat exhausted on the beach, most of them barely able to keep their eyes open. Congratulations, warriors. You've just completed something that most people can't even imagine attempting. But remember that Hell Week is just one step in a long journey. You've proven that you can handle extreme adversity, but now you need to recover and prepare for Phase 2. Sarah felt a deep sense of accomplishment as she listened to the chief's words. She had not only survived Hell Week, but had performed well throughout the 5 days, earning the respect of her instructors and classmates. More importantly, she had proven to herself that she belonged in this elite community and could handle anything the training program could present. The recovery period after Hell Week lasted 4 days, during which the surviving candidates were allowed to sleep, eat regular meals, and receive medical attention for the various injuries and ailments they had accumulated. Sarah used the time to reflect on what she had learned about herself and to prepare mentally for the challenges that lay ahead in Phase 2. When training resumed, the atmosphere had changed significantly. The candidates who remained had proven their basic toughness and commitment, and the instructors began treating them more like future teammates than like students being tested. Sarah noticed that the gender-based skepticism she had faced earlier in training had largely disappeared, replaced by acceptance based on her demonstrated performance. Phase 1 concluded with advanced training in small boat operations, land warfare skills, and medical training. Sarah excelled in all areas, particularly in the marksmanship training where her natural shooting ability became apparent to everyone involved. Her scores on the rifle and pistol ranges were consistently among the highest in the class, drawing attention from senior instructors who began to see her potential as a sniper. When Phase 1 ended, 62 candidates remained from the original class of 186. Sarah had not only survived but had graduated in the top 10% of her class, earning recognition as one of the outstanding performers in Class 347. As she prepared for Phase 2 and the specialized training that would follow, she felt confident that she had overcome the biggest obstacles in her path to becoming a Navy SEAL.